There are ideas that, once understood, cannot be forgotten. Theories about existence that fundamentally alter how you see reality. Not because they're complex, but because they're disturbing. They reveal possibilities you'd rather not consider. Gaps in certainty you'd prefer not to acknowledge. Questions that don't have comfortable answers. And once these theories enter your awareness, they create permanent unease, a nagging recognition that what you assumed was solid might be illusion, that what you believe is real might be simulation, that what you think is you might be something else entirely. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are serious philosophical and scientific hypotheses, developed by credible thinkers, supported by logical arguments and, in some cases, mathematical probability. And they all point to the same disturbing conclusion. You cannot be certain about anything, not about the external world, not about other minds, not even about your own consciousness. Everything you think you know rests on assumptions that cannot be proven, and examining those assumptions reveals an abyss of uncertainty that most people spend their lives avoiding. We're going to examine 5 theories, 5 different ways your understanding of existence might be completely wrong, and by the end, you'll understand why some philosophers say that certainty is impossible, that doubt is the only honest position, that the more clearly you think, the less you can know for sure. If you're ready to have your assumptions challenged, if you want to understand why reality might not be what it seems, then subscribe to the Hidden Codex. Turn on notifications, because what we're exploring will disturb you. We'll create doubt where you had certainty. We'll show you that the ground you're standing on might not be ground at all. Let's begin with the first theory, the one that makes all others possible: solipsism. Solipsism is the theory that only your mind is certain to exist, that everything else, the external world, other people, physical reality, might be illusion, might be dream, might be simulation. You can't prove otherwise, because all your evidence for external reality comes through your own consciousness, through your perceptions, through your senses and thoughts, and you cannot step outside your consciousness to verify that these perceptions correspond to anything real. You're trapped inside your own awareness, and everything you believe about the world is inference based on internal experience. Think about it. Right now, you're experiencing sensations, visual impressions, sounds, the feeling of your body, thoughts about what you're experiencing. But how do you know these experiences correspond to anything external? How do you know there's a real world causing these sensations? You've never experienced the world directly, only your perceptions of it. Your perceptions could be generated internally, could be dreams, could be hallucinations, could be a simulation running in your mind, and you'd have no way to know the difference. You might object. You might say, "But I can verify the external world. I can touch things. Other people confirm what I see. Science proves objective reality exists." But all these verifications happen inside your consciousness. You experience touching something. That experience occurs in your mind. Other people confirm your perceptions, but your awareness of their confirmation is also an experience in your mind. Science provides evidence, but your knowledge of that evidence comes through experiences in your mind. You cannot escape the circle, cannot step outside consciousness to verify that consciousness is connected to anything beyond itself. This is the epistemological prison. You're locked inside your own awareness, and everything you believe about external reality is assumption, educated guess, inference you cannot prove. Philosophers have known this for centuries. Descartes tried to escape it with his famous cogito. I think, therefore I am. At least I know I exist, because the act of doubting proves there's something doing the doubting. But Descartes couldn't get beyond that, couldn't prove anything else, couldn't verify that the external world exists, that other minds exist, that God exists. He tried various arguments, but none of them work. None escape the fundamental problem that all knowledge comes through consciousness, and consciousness cannot verify itself. This is what solipsism reveals, that you might be alone, completely alone, the only consciousness that exists. Everything else, everyone else, might be projections of your mind, characters in your dream, NPCs in your simulation, not real in the way you're real. You cannot prove this isn't the case, cannot demonstrate with certainty that other people have inner lives, have consciousness like yours. You assume they do, because they look like you, act like you, speak like you, but that's just assumption, based on similarity, based on behavior. You've never experienced anyone else's consciousness, never verified that consciousness exists anywhere except in you, and you can't, because consciousness is private, inaccessible, known only from within. So other people might be philosophical zombies, beings that act conscious but aren't, that behave exactly like conscious beings but have no inner experience, no awareness, no one home, just biological machines producing appropriate responses, and you could never tell the difference, because all you have access to is their behavior, not their inner states. This is disturbing, because if you take it seriously, if you really consider the possibility, it means you might be utterly alone, that every relationship you have might be with someone who isn't really there, who doesn't actually experience anything, who is just an appearance in your consciousness, your parents, your friends, your loved ones. All of them might be empty, void of experience, characters you're interacting with, but not real in the sense of being conscious like you're conscious, and there's no way to know, no test you can run, no proof you can obtain. You just have to assume, have to take on faith that other minds exist, that consciousness is common, that you're not alone in awareness. But faith is all it is, assumption, hope, not knowledge, not certainty, just belief you cannot verify. And once you see this, once you understand that the existence of other minds cannot be proven, something shifts. The world becomes less certain, less solid, more dreamlike, because you realize you're making massive assumptions, treating as obvious something that isn't obvious at all, that other people are conscious, that they experience life the way you do, that they're real in the same way you're real. You can't know this, can never know it, can only believe it. And belief, no matter how strong, is not the same as knowledge. Now, let's move to the second theory, one that's become increasingly prominent in recent years, simulation theory. The hypothesis that reality as you experience it is not base reality, but a simulation, a computer program running in some higher dimension, creating the appearance of physical reality, of space and time, of matter and consciousness, while actually being code, information, digital process running on substrate you cannot access or perceive. This isn't science fiction. This is serious hypothesis proposed by philosophers and scientists, most notably by Nick Bostrom in his 2003 paper. Bostrom argued that at least one of three propositions must be true. Either civilizations destroy themselves before reaching technological capacity to create realistic simulations, or advanced civilizations choose not to create ancestor simulations, or we are almost certainly living in a simulation. Because if it's possible to create realistic simulations, and if advanced civilizations want to create them, then simulated realities will vastly outnumber base reality. There will be one base reality, and potentially billions or trillions of simulations. So, statistically, if you find yourself in a reality, you're more likely to be in a simulation than in base reality, simply because simulations outnumber base. This is probability argument, and it's hard to refute, unless you believe civilizations always destroy themselves, or that no advanced civilization would create simulations. You have to accept that simulated realities probably exist, and if they exist, they probably outnumber base reality, and if they outnumber base reality, you're probably in one. Because random selection from the set of all realities would more likely place you in the common type, simulation, than the rare type, base. This doesn't prove you're in a simulation, but it suggests probability favors that conclusion. And that's disturbing, because it means the world you experience, the physical reality you inhabit, the laws of nature you observe, might all be programmed, created by intelligence in a higher dimension, running on hardware you cannot perceive, following rules that could be changed by the administrators. You might think you're in base physical reality, governed by fundamental laws of physics, but actually you're in software, in code, in digital construct that seems real from inside but is actually information processing. And there's no way to tell from inside the simulation, because the simulation defines what seems real. If it's sophisticated enough, if it creates consistent laws and continuous experience, inhabitants cannot detect that they're simulated, cannot find the edge of the program, cannot see the code, cannot access the hardware. They're trapped in the reality the simulation creates, which seems absolutely real to them. Seems like the only reality. Seems like base, but isn't. You might be in that situation right now. The reality you experience might be simulation, might be program, might be running on substrate completely different from what you imagine, and you have no way to verify either way. No test that could prove you're in base reality, because any test you run happens within the framework the simulation provides, uses the rules the simulation implements, produces results the simulation allows. You can't step outside to check, can't access the layer above, can't verify that this is base. Some people argue that simulation theory is unfalsifiable, that if you can't test it, it's not scientific. But that doesn't make it false. Just means you can't know. And that's the point. You can't know whether you're in base reality or simulation. Both are consistent with your experience. Both could produce exactly what you observe. So certainty is impossible. You're left with probabilities, with arguments about likelihood, with Bostrom's statistical reasoning suggesting simulation is more probable than base. But even if you reject the probability argument, even if you think base reality is more likely, you can't eliminate the possibility. Can't prove you're not in a simulation, can only believe you're not. And that belief might be wrong, might be exactly what a simulation would create. The strong conviction that you're in base reality, the intuition that simulation seems unlikely. These could be features of the simulation, designed to prevent inhabitants from questioning their reality, from seeing through the illusion, from recognizing that they're in code. If simulation theory is true, several disturbing implications follow. First, your universe could be turned off at any moment. If it's a program, it can be terminated. The beings running it could decide to end the simulation, and you would simply cease. No warning, no continuation, just instant non-existence. Second, your universe could be paused. Time itself could stop. The simulation could freeze, and you wouldn't know, because when it resumes, your experience would be continuous. You'd have no memory of the pause. no awareness that time stopped. It could have been paused billions of times, for durations of any length, and you couldn't know. Third, your reality could be edited. The past could be changed. Memories could be implanted. Evidence could be modified. And you'd never know, because your awareness of the past comes from memory and evidence, both of which exist within the simulation, both of which can be altered by whoever controls it. Fourth, you might not be the only consciousness in your body. Multiple simulations could be running on the same substrate. Your consciousness could be one of many, all sharing the same brain, the same memories, the same experiences, taking turns being aware, and you'd never know, because each consciousness only experiences its own moments of awareness, doesn't know about the others. Fifth, your entire life could be much shorter than you think. The simulation could be running in compressed time. What feels like years to you could be microseconds in base reality, or the reverse. What feels like microseconds could be years outside. Time inside the simulation doesn't have to correspond to time outside, and you have no way to check, no way to verify how fast or slow the simulation is running, no way to know how much base time corresponds to your experienced time. All of this is possible if simulation theory is true, and you cannot prove it's false, cannot verify you're in base reality, cannot eliminate the possibility that everything you experience is code, is program, is simulation created by intelligence you cannot perceive for purposes you cannot know. Now, let's examine the third theory, philosophical zombies. This connects to solipsism, but goes deeper. A philosophical zombie is a being that behaves exactly like a conscious being, but has no consciousness, no inner experience, no qualia, no what it's like to be aspect. The lights are on, but nobody's home. It responds appropriately to stimuli, says it's conscious, claims to have experiences, behaves indistinguishably from a conscious being. But there's nothing it's like to be that being. No subjective experience happening, just mechanisms producing behavior, just input-output processing, with no awareness in the middle. The question is, are philosophical zombies possible? Could there be beings that act conscious but aren't? And if they're possible, how would you know you're not surrounded by them? How would you know that anyone besides you is actually conscious? Some philosophers argue zombies are impossible, that consciousness must arise from the physical processes that produce consciousness-like behavior, that if something acts conscious, it must be conscious. But this is assumption, based on the belief that consciousness is produced by physical process, that it's nothing over and above the mechanisms. But you don't know this. Don't know that consciousness necessarily arises from complex information processing. Don't know that behavior guarantees inner experience. You only know from your own case. You know you're conscious. Know there's something it's like to be you. But you cannot know this about anyone else. Cannot access their inner experience. Cannot verify consciousness exists anywhere except in you. So other people might be zombies, might be mechanisms without experience, might be producing consciousness-like behavior without actually being conscious. And you could never tell, because all you have access to is behavior, not inner states. This is called the hard problem of consciousness, the problem of explaining how physical processes give rise to subjective experience, how matter becomes mind, how neural firing becomes the felt quality of experience, why there's something it's like to be a conscious being. Science can explain behavior, can map neural correlates, can predict responses, but it cannot explain experience itself, cannot explain why these processes feel like anything, why they produce inner life, why there's a subject experiencing rather than just mechanisms operating. This explanatory gap means consciousness might be separate from physical process, might be something additional, something that doesn't necessarily arise from complex information processing, and if consciousness is additional, then zombie worlds are possible. Worlds physically identical to ours but where consciousness doesn't arise, where beings behave exactly like conscious beings but have no inner experience, no awareness, no subjectivity, just mechanisms producing appropriate outputs. If zombies are possible, you face the problem of other minds again, but in more acute form. Not just the worry that you can't prove other minds exist, but the possibility that they don't exist, that everyone around you is zombie, that you're the only consciousness in a world of unconscious mechanisms, all producing behavior that mimics consciousness, all claiming to be aware, all acting exactly as if they have inner lives, but none of them actually experiencing anything, all of them empty. This is more disturbing than solipsism, because solipsism says external reality might be projection of your mind. Everything might be your dream. Zombie theory says external reality might be real, but everyone in it might be unconscious. The world exists, other people exist, but they're not experiencing it. They're not aware. They're mechanisms, machines, biological computers producing outputs, with no one home, no one experiencing, no consciousness anywhere except in you. And you cannot refute this, cannot prove that other people are conscious, because consciousness is not externally observable. You can observe behavior, can measure neural activity, can detect information processing, but you cannot detect subjective experience, cannot observe what it's like, cannot verify that anyone experiences anything. You assume they do, because they're similar to you, because they claim consciousness, because they behave as if aware. But these are assumptions, not proofs, not certainties, just inferences from similarity and behavior. And these inferences might be wrong. Everyone around you might be zombie, might be mechanisms without experience, and you'd never know, never have any way to know, would just continue assuming, continue believing, continue treating zombies as if they're conscious, while actually they're not, while actually you're alone in awareness, the only conscious being in a world of unconscious mechanisms. Now, the fourth theory, last Thursdayism. This is the hypothesis that the universe was created last Thursday, complete with all evidence of a longer past, with fossils, with light from distant stars, with memories in your brain, with historical records, all created simultaneously, all appearing to indicate a long history, but actually recent, actually fabricated, actually false evidence planted by whatever created the universe last Thursday. You cannot refute this, cannot prove the universe is older than 1 week, because all your evidence comes from the present, from things that exist now. Fossils exist now. They appear old. But appearance isn't proof. They could have been created recently with the appearance of age. Light from distant stars exists now. It appears to have been traveling for millions of years, but it could have been created in transit, already on its way, never actually originating from those stars. Your memories exist now. They seem to indicate past experiences, but they could have been implanted, created last Thursday along with everything else. False memories, seeming real but actually recent fabrications. Every piece of evidence for an old universe exists in the present, and could have been created in the present, with false indicators of age. This is unfalsifiable. You cannot disprove it, because any evidence you present exists now, and could have been created recently. The hypothesis is consistent with all observations, explains everything you observe, makes all the same predictions as the hypothesis that the universe is actually old. So, empirically, they're equivalent. You can't choose between them based on evidence, can only choose based on assumptions, based on preferences, based on what seems more likely. But likelihood is subjective. You prefer to believe the universe is old because that seems simpler, seems to require fewer assumptions, seems more natural. But preference isn't proof. Simplicity isn't proof. What seems natural isn't proof. Last Thursdayism might be true, and you have no way to verify it's not. The disturbing implication is about memory and personal identity. If last Thursdayism is true, you weren't alive last Wednesday, didn't exist before last Thursday. Your memories of times before last Thursday are false, are fabrications, were created with your brain last Thursday. This means your entire sense of personal history is illusion. Your childhood never happened. Your past relationships never happened. Everything you remember from before last Thursday never happened. You came into existence last Thursday, with false memories, with fabricated past, thinking you've been alive for years or decades, but actually less than a week old. And next Thursday, the universe might be created again, might be reset, with new false memories, new fabricated past. And the you that exists now will never have existed, will be replaced by a new you, who thinks they've been alive for years, who has memories of this conversation, who believes they're continuous with you, but actually isn't, is a different person, created next Thursday, with memories of you, but not actually you. You'll be gone, erased, replaced. This theory eliminates certainty about the past, shows you cannot know anything occurred before now, cannot verify any history, cannot confirm any memory, can only trust, only assume, only believe. And that belief might be completely wrong. Your entire sense of having been alive, having experienced things, having learned and grown and changed, all might be false, might be fabricated memories implanted in a brain created moments ago, days ago, but not years ago, not decades ago. You cannot know, cannot prove otherwise, cannot verify continuity between past and present, because the past doesn't exist anymore. Only the present exists, and the present contains evidence that seems to indicate a past. But that evidence could be fabricated, could be false, could be lies told by whoever or whatever created the universe in its current state, complete with all misleading evidence of history that never happened. Now, the fifth and final theory, Boltzmann brains. This comes from physics, from thermodynamics and probability. The idea is that in an infinite universe, or a universe that exists for infinite time, random fluctuations will eventually produce any configuration of matter, including brains with memories and beliefs and sensory experiences. But these brains won't have formed through normal evolution, won't have grown in bodies, won't have experienced real histories. They'll have spontaneously assembled from random quantum fluctuations, complete with false memories, false beliefs, false sensory experiences. Boltzmann brains, named after physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, who explored these statistical implications. And here's the disturbing part. If the universe is infinite or lasts forever, Boltzmann brains will vastly outnumber normal brains, because normal brains require specific conditions, require planets, require evolution, require billions of years of development. Boltzmann brains just require random fluctuation, which will happen eventually, infinitely many times, creating infinitely many brains, far more than evolution could ever produce. This means if you find yourself existing, if you find yourself conscious with memories and sensory experiences, you are statistically more likely to be a Boltzmann brain than a normal brain, more likely to have spontaneously assembled from quantum fluctuation than to have evolved normally, more likely to have false memories implanted by chance than true memories from real experiences, more likely to be experiencing sensory hallucination than actual perception of real environment, because Boltzmann brains outnumber normal brains, because random assembly happens more frequently than ordered development, because chaos produces more brains than evolution does, given infinite time, given infinite space. So, probability suggests you're not what you think you are, not a brain that evolved over billions of years, not experiencing real environment, not remembering real past, but a random fluctuation, a brief statistical aberration, a Boltzmann brain that assembled by chance, that will dissipate back into chaos in the next moment. That exists only because random quantum fluctuation happened to produce a brain-like pattern, complete with false memories and false sensory experiences, believing itself to be normal, believing itself to have history, believing itself to be perceiving reality, when actually none of that is true. You cannot refute this, cannot prove you're not a Boltzmann brain, because a Boltzmann brain would have exactly the same evidence you have, would have exactly the same memories, would have exactly the same sensory experiences, would believe exactly the same things, including the belief that it's not a Boltzmann brain. So your certainty that you're normal doesn't count as evidence. A Boltzmann brain would have that same certainty, would be equally convinced, would be equally unable to tell the difference. The only difference is that one of you has real history and the other doesn't. One of you evolved normally and the other assembled randomly. One of you will continue existing and the other will dissipate imminently. But from inside, you cannot tell which you are, cannot know if your next moment will be your last, cannot verify that your memories correspond to anything that actually happened, cannot prove you're not about to dissolve back into random quantum fluctuation, having existed for only a brief moment, long enough to have false experiences and false memories, long enough to wonder if you might be Boltzmann brain, but not long enough to verify you're not. Philosophers have tried various responses to Boltzmann brain problem. Some argue that infinite universe is improbable, that the universe will end, that time is finite. So Boltzmann brains won't have opportunity to vastly outnumber normal brains. Others argue that probability calculations are wrong, that you should use different measure, different way of counting. That produces different conclusion. But none of these responses are certain. None eliminate the possibility. None prove you're not Boltzmann brain. They just offer reasons to hope you're not. Reasons to believe you're probably normal. But hope and belief aren't knowledge, aren't certainty, aren't proof. You still can't know, still can't verify, still can't eliminate the disturbing possibility that you're random fluctuation, that your entire experienced life is false memory, that you came into existence moments ago and might cease moments from now, that nothing you believe about your past is true, that nothing you perceive about your environment is real, that you're not what you think you are, not a person with history, not a mind perceiving reality, just a brief statistical aberration, a Boltzmann brain, experiencing illusion, believing illusion, about to dissolve back into the chaos you briefly emerged from. If these 5 theories disturb you, if you recognize how they undermine certainty, if you see that you cannot refute them, then subscribe to the Hidden Codex, because we explore ideas that create permanent unease, that reveal gaps in certainty, that show you cannot know what you thought you knew. Next time, we'll examine something even more destabilizing. Until then, sit with what you've learned. That you cannot prove other minds exist, cannot verify you're not in simulation, cannot eliminate the possibility that everyone around you is zombie, cannot confirm anything happened before now, cannot know you're not Boltzmann brain about to dissipate. 5 theories. 5 different ways your understanding of existence might be completely wrong, and you have no way to know which, if any, are false. No way to verify what's real. No way to achieve certainty about anything. You're left with assumptions, with beliefs you cannot prove, with faith in regularities you cannot verify, with trust that your experience corresponds to reality even though you cannot check. And this uncertainty is permanent, is unavoidable, is the condition of consciousness. You exist within your own awareness, cannot step outside to verify that anything beyond awareness exists, cannot prove other minds, cannot confirm base reality, cannot eliminate zombies, cannot verify past, cannot know you're not random fluctuation, just have to proceed, have to live, have to make choices, all based on assumptions you cannot prove, on beliefs you cannot verify, on certainties that aren't certain. This is the epistemological situation. This is the gap between experience and knowledge. This is why philosophers say that doubt is more honest than certainty, that skepticism is more rigorous than belief, that the more carefully you examine what you know, the less you can claim to know for sure. These 5 theories don't tell you what's true. They tell you what you cannot know is false, cannot eliminate, cannot refute. And that inability to refute creates permanent possibility, permanent doubt, permanent unease. You wanted certainty, wanted to know, wanted to be sure, but now you see that certainty is impossible, that knowledge has limits, that some questions cannot be answered, can only be lived with, can only be acknowledged, can only be accepted as permanent features of the human condition. You cannot know if other minds exist, cannot verify you're in base reality, cannot eliminate zombies, cannot confirm past, cannot know you're not Boltzmann brain. These uncertainties are permanent, are unavoidable, are the cost of consciousness, the price of awareness, the burden of being subject trapped inside subjective experience, unable to verify that experience corresponds to anything beyond itself, unable to prove assumptions, unable to achieve certainty, just aware, just experiencing, just believing, without proof, without verification, without certainty, forever. That's what these 5 theories reveal. That's what they destroy. Not specific beliefs, but the peace of mind that comes from thinking you know, from believing certainty is possible, from trusting that your experience is reliable guide to reality. Now you know it's not. No, you cannot verify. No, you're making assumptions. No, those assumptions might be wrong. No, you'll never know for sure. And that knowledge destroys peace, creates permanent unease, permanent doubt, permanent recognition that you cannot know what you thought you knew. Welcome to epistemological uncertainty. Welcome to the limits of knowledge. Welcome to the permanent condition of not knowing. This is what careful thinking produces. This is where rigorous philosophy leads. This is the price of examining your assumptions. Not comfortable certainty, but disturbing doubt. Not peace of mind, but recognition of how little you can know for sure. That's what these 5 theories do. That's what they destroy. And once destroyed, peace cannot be restored, can only be replaced with acceptance, with acknowledgement, with living in uncertainty, proceeding despite doubt, functioning without certainty, making choices without proof. This is the human condition once you see it clearly, once you understand the limits, Once you recognize what cannot be known, you don't get answers, don't get certainty, don't get peace, just get awareness of gaps, of limits, of permanent uncertainty. And that awareness changes everything, makes you more humble, more cautious, more aware that others might be right when they disagree, because you cannot be certain you're right, cannot prove your beliefs, cannot verify your assumptions, can only believe, and admit you're believing, and acknowledge that belief might be wrong. That's the gift of these theories. Not comfort, not certainty, not peace, but honesty. About what you can and cannot know, about limits of knowledge, about unavoidable uncertainty. And living with that honesty is harder than living with false certainty, but it's more true, more accurate, more aligned with actual human epistemological situation. You don't know, can't know, won't ever know, can only believe, and proceed, and accept. That uncertainty is permanent, that doubt is honest, that the ground beneath you might not be ground at all.